we might jump in and make a start. We're at 109 participants, which is fantastic, Chris. You're drawing the big crowds.
Wow.
So we are into the second last session for day 2 of our Catholic Learning Online Summit. And this session is getting serious with Google Classroom. And we do have Chris Betcher from the Google for Education Australia team, who's going to be leading us through today's session. So we welcome him and welcome all of you, and thank you for tuning in. As we start all of these sessions, we'll just do an acknowledgement of country. With all the lands that we're spread out across, we acknowledge that they are and always will be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lands. We pay our respect to our First Nations people, past, present and emerging. And we begin with this short prayer. We call on God's grace to protect us in this time of uncertainty, to guide us with our learning, to support us as we navigate new things, to shield our loved ones from harm, to comfort those who are lonely, and to be with us in everything that we do. Amen. Okay, my name is Ben Woods. I work at the Wollongong Catholic Education Office and have been facilitating with the others from across all the dioceses. And as I said, a big warm welcome to you all, and thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you're getting a lot out of these sessions. Acknowledge that everyone's been thrown in the deep end over the last month or so. And it has been a bit of a mad scramble to get upskilled in this remote learning world that we're in. But hopefully you're finding these worthwhile and upskilling and having some time to kind of go back and play around with things in preparation for term 2. And those that already started term 2, hope everything has started smoothly. Just a little heads up that the webinar is being recorded. That's a security feature across the diocese, as well as a feature that enables us to put it up on the website as a resource for you at a later date. We will be using the chat function, so feel free to throw questions into the chat. I'll monitor that, let Chris continue working through, and then we'll address those questions as we go through. If I can answer them straight away, I will. Otherwise, we'll get Chris to answer them as we go. If you do want to open up a screen next to what you're looking at the moment, all you need to do is hit escape, and that will minimize the shared screen that you can see. And that will enable you to open up another screen with maybe Google Classroom in it to be able to see both of them side by side if you move the frames around. Apart from that, I will throw over to Chris to take us through today's session. So thank you, Chris.
Good on you. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I will attempt to share my screen, which I think is this one. And maybe, always does this thing. I'm a bit of a Zoom numpty. Sorry, you'll have to forgive me. I normally use Meet, but I'm getting used to Zoom. I think it's one of these. I can't see. Okay, there you are. Right, gotcha. All right, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's really weird because I can't see it, so that's odd. But anyway, I will do that. So thanks for joining, everyone. I've called this session Getting Serious with Google Classroom, and it's just hopefully, like, there's a lot of beginners stuff about Classroom, just how to get started with your first Classroom. And that's all very useful, but I guess I'm pitching this at the people who've already been using Classroom a bit and just trying to fine tune some of the ways you use it, maybe show you some of the new features that are in Classroom. There's some really cool stuff there these days. Just a little bit, just my background, just so you know. So I have been a classroom teacher for about 30 years. I was originally an art teacher, and then through a strange series of events, ended up teaching technology and design and multimedia and all sorts of things. So I've kind of dabbled in the sort of design, art, media space for most of that teaching career. And then a couple of years ago, I was offered an opportunity to work with teachers. And I work with a company called EdTech Team, who you might have heard of before. They did the Google Summits all around the world, actually. And then last year I got an opportunity to start some work with the Google for Education team here in Sydney. So that's my background. That's where I'm coming from. I feel like I speak from some classroom experience at least. So hopefully I can bring that to you today. I've got some slides. You can see there's a link down the bottom of the slides there, and I've also put it in the chat, bit.ly/classroom-serious. So if you want to grab that link, and that'll take you to a web published version of these slides if you want to just follow along. And I might be adding to the slides later. This is a nice thing about cloud documents is if I think of something later that I didn't remember to put in, I can always add it in at a later time and it'll be there. So just to get started, you've heard of Google for Education. It's this suite of tools, Chromebooks, G Suite, and of course Classroom. And it forms this ecosystem that we refer to as Google for Education. Within G Suite itself, G Suite's a suite of tools, doc sheets, slides, Jamboard, Gmail, calendar. There's a whole bunch of tools in there, one of which is Classroom. And Classroom is a little bit special because it was designed specifically for education. Unlike Google Docs and Sheets and Slides and some of the others, they're used in the enterprise as well as education, but Classroom really was designed specifically for schools. And it was designed to do a couple of things. It was designed to be easy to use. And I think most teachers that sort of start using Classroom probably agree that, you know, it's actually pretty straightforward compared to a lot of other sort of more complicated, more full learning management system type stuff. Classroom is not really a learning management system. It doesn't aim to be. It just aims to be a place to help you manage the workflow within your classroom. It doesn't try to be all things to all people. So I thought what we'd start with is just in terms of just getting set up in that classroom, just some best practices, just real quickly, because I know I don't want this to be a beginner class, but just a couple of beginner things that I just want to sort of make sure everyone's on top of. That is when you get set up in Classroom, just things like setting up your header image, filling in your class details, deciding on the stream behavior. I'm going to go and show you these in just a sec. Checking your class code. I will mention that Google Meet is now integrated in Classroom, and there's an asterisk on that because I know your diocese probably won't be using Meet because I think you're pretty much standardized on Zoom in most of your dioceses. But I just sort of point out that it is there and you can turn it on or off, and it will probably be off for you guys. There's also mark calculation. There's a grade book inside Classroom and you can determine how that grade book works, either to not add up any grades or to just simply add up the grades by total, or you can also weight by category. So you can give certain weighting to say homework versus classwork versus practical work versus exams. So you can weight your results that way. And really importantly, how to manage your email notifications. So with that, I'm just going to jump out of that slide for a second and pop into Classroom. And so Classroom, I'm anticipating that most people in this session probably know how to get to Classroom, but just in case you don't, if you go to any Google tool and open up a new page, you'll normally get this little set of 9 buttons in the corner here. Oh, Bathurst has Google Meet. That's cool to know. So there's little buttons in the top corner here, the little 9 dots. And its correct name, by the way, is the application launcher, although people often call it the waffle or the channel 9 button or the Rubik's Cube. Like, it has all sorts of nicknames. But if you click in that, you'll see that is where you get to all the different Google tools. And that is where somewhere in here you'll find Classroom just right there. Okay. Now I'm actually using CENet account today that Frank Brooks was kind enough to give me. And I'm told that CENet and all the dioceses actually can work together in a kind of a trusted domain relationship. I'm hoping that's true because I'm hoping to get you guys into my classroom today to do some practical stuff. So back to Classroom. So here we are. So I've got 2 classes in here at the moment. There's the demo class that I'll set up today and this thing called a lesson library, which I'll explain more as we go along. And just for now, I'd like to get you guys into my demo class. And so I'm going to open this up here and you'll see there's a code there. So if you're able to, right now, if you're able to open another tab or open another window and multitask, if you guys could kindly go to the little plus button up in the top corner of Classroom and say join class, and it'll ask you for a code. And hopefully, perhaps someone in the chat could just let me know if that works for you, if you're able to get in. I'm hoping the diocese will be able to get into a CNet account. I know Lismore can. I'm assuming the others can too. And just in case anyone was wondering, that second character there is a lowercase l not an uppercase I. And that is one of the confusions that you'll get, especially from kids. They will ask you those questions. Oh, Miss, is that an I or an L, or is that a 1 or an O or a 0? Or like, you'll get those sorts of questions. I can tell you that class codes, thank you, Mia, class codes are always lowercase and numbers. They're never uppercase. So you know that that's a lowercase L, even though it looks like an uppercase I. So tell your kids that too. All right, so it looks like people are getting in. Margaret, you can't get in. Para can't get in. Yeah, I anticipated this might be the trouble today, that some people can get in and some people can't, and I do apologize for that. So those who can get in, please do. Those who can't get in, I guess today is your day to follow along. My apologies. Okay, it looks like Lismore can. Maybe Lismore's the only one that can. Okay, I might have a chat with Frank about that, because it would be really handy if the diocese could work together across domains like that. Bathurst can, excellent. All right, so I am just going to take that code off the screen. If you haven't already got in, you might just jot that down on a piece of paper so I can take this off the screen. YL6M5ZU. Okay. All right, fantastic. Clearly it is working for some people. So I'm just going to pop over to the people tab here and I can see, okay, well, there you go. A whole bunch of people did manage to get in. So I don't know where you guys are from, but welcome. Thanks for joining. In case you were wondering, you can have up to 1,000 people in a classroom, of which 20 can be teachers. That's probably overkill for most classroom situations, but you can have that. And you can see I have a teachers section at the top here and a student section down the bottom. And I can click this little button here to add extra teachers and invite them in. So you could have co-teachers, support teachers, you can have the principal, whatever you, however you want to do it. You can have up to 20 teachers in a class and the rest can be students. So I guess that leaves, what, 980 students. Good luck with that. All right. So that's the first thing I want to tell you is just getting some people into the room here. Now let's look at some best practices for just setting this up. First of all, whenever I set up a brand new classroom, the first thing I do is just make it work the way I want it to work. And that could be as simple as going to this, like this banner here. Just get rid of that. This banner and clicking on the select theme option down the side here. And you can see I've got a whole bunch of themes in here. You guys have probably discovered this, so I won't dwell on it, but you can actually sort of, this is the equivalent of going to your classroom and putting up a poster or something on the wall. It just gives your class a little bit of character. But sometimes I've seen teachers use, you can see these are all different colors. So there's some blue ones and some green ones and so on. So I've seen teachers use these to color code their classes. So they might have like year 9 classes might be all blue and year 10 classes could be all green or something, you know, so they can use that color coding for that kind of purpose. The other thing though, you want to go into this gear wheel up here in the top corner and have a look in here. This is called the class settings, and this is really where you should just spend a moment to look at to make sure your class works the way you want. So class description, class section, room and subject. I've got this blank at the moment. In the real world of schools, I would fill that in. I would make sure I put the room number, I put the subject that belongs to, so that kids have that background information. Down in the general section, this is where that class code that you guys typed in to join is, and you can see it's YL6M5ZU. Now, it is possible to reset that class code. I won't do it right now, but you can reset it. Now, why would you want to reset it? Well, imagine you've got some very young students and they are continually asking you, Miss, is that an O or a 0? Is that a 1 or an I? Like you could, if you're getting a lot of ambiguity about those things, you can actually reset the code and you can just keep resetting it until you get a code that doesn't have any ambiguous characters in there. Okay, and then it'll stop you getting all those questions from the kids. So tell them that it's lowercase and numbers, but if it really is a problem, you can always reset it. The stream down here, now the stream is the part of the classroom where students can comment. There's a social aspect to it where people can sort of comment and talk to each other. Now, by default, the stream is set up in such a way that students can both post and comment. Now, that could be okay, or it could not be okay. It depends on your kids. It depends on how many kids. It depends on the type of kids. It depends on your approach to how you want it to work. You have an option here to say that the students can both post and comment, or only the students the students can only comment, not post, or that only teachers can post and comment. So you can actually kind of restrict what students can do on that front page. I would suggest that for a normal situation, normal classroom, I kind of like this students can only comment option. It lets teachers start new conversations and it lets students respond to those conversations. In a real classroom situation, I've always found that if you allow students to both post and comment, it just gets a little crazy. Kids are in there talking about what they watched on television last night and all sorts of things. It just gets a little mad. That said, in a remote situation where we are in now, where kids are not in a physical classroom, it could very well be that that social stream on the front page is really their only opportunity to have a sort of social connection with their classmates. So you may consider opening that up to students can both post and comment. Or the other option you could do, you could actually just set the work classrooms to be students can only comment, and you run it like a bit more regimented, but you actually create another classroom and you call it like the social space or the hangout room or whatever you want to call it. And that's where you can allow kids to sort of have their sort of more social aspect if you want to. Okay, it's entirely up to you. But I just want to alert you to the fact that that setting is there and it's a pretty important one. You can also down here, this is where that Meet integration I was talking about is, and you can turn that on and make that visible to students. Given that most people are not using Meet, I'm not going to dwell on that one today, but if you want to know more about that, please hit me up offline and I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. Down the bottom section here is the marking. And this is what I meant before about you can set up the mark calculation. So in the gradebook inside Google Classroom, right now it's set to not calculate marks at all, but I could set it to calculate total points. So if I have an assignment worth, say, 10 points and 20 points and 30 points, it'll add those up. So I now have a mark out of 60, right? Or I could say weight by category. And by that, I can go down here and create categories. So I might create, say, classwork and make classwork worth 50% of the grade. And I can have another one for homework. If you do homework, and you can give that, I don't know, 20% of the grade, and so on. Those numbers have to add to 100. But if you set up those marked categories, then when you assign, and I'll actually do it because I'll show you how it works in practice. Classwork, let's do exams. Okay, so we've got 3 categories there, right? And exams would have to be worth 30, right? Because it has to add up to 100. All right, so I can change that to say weight by category. That's fantastic, that's all done. And whether I want to show students their overall marks. This is what I mean by just take a moment to set up your classroom before you really sort of start motoring along in it, because these things will kind of affect the way the classroom works down the track. Does that make sense? I see nodding heads. That's excellent. If there's any questions, guys, I have absolutely no problem if you want to unmute your microphone and just ask the question rather than put it in the chat. I'm more than happy for this to be a conversation. Okay, so those are your classwork settings. I'm just going to exit out of there. I want to save that. Why can't I save that? Oh, because I didn't put those numbers in. What did I say? 50, 30, 20. That'll do. Okay.
Chris, we've got a question about AD grading system. Is that ever going to be a...
It's not there now, as you obviously know, and I haven't heard any murmurs about it. I will say that if you have specific requests about Classroom or any of our products, in fact, right down the bottom here in Classroom, you see there's a little question mark in the bottom corner. If you click that question mark and say report issue or request feature, it will actually be this option, and you can just type some stuff in there. You can actually make your requests. So if you feel that ADOE grades is something you really want, please put in a request for it. I will tell you that the Classroom team that builds this product reads every single one of those pieces of feedback. So it's not like your feedback goes into a black hole and you never hear about it again. They definitely read it. Now that said, we get thousands of requests for features, and obviously the more people that ask for a specific thing, the higher up the priority list it goes. So, you know, if it's a real big deal, start a campaign, get everybody to put it in, right? And start to increase the number of people who are asking for it. But as Dennis is saying in the chat there, you can definitely, it's a pretty simple matter to take the spreadsheet and just assign a spreadsheet to say, like, you know, marks between a certain grade equal an A and a B and so on. So it's not a built-in thing, but it is doable in the sheet itself. All right, so let me just go back to check what I wanted to cover next. It was stream behavior, class code, media integrated. Oh, manage your mail integrations. Let me talk about this one for a sec, because this throws a lot of teachers. You probably know that if you get, if you use Classroom at all, you start to get a lot of email all of a sudden. Every time kids hand an assignment in or do something like, or chat, you get a notification and your email gets overrun. So here's what you need to do. Up in the top corner, under these 3 dashes in the top corner, you can click on that menu there and go down to settings. Now, Classroom really only has one setting, and it's whether you want your email notifications to be on or off. That's it. Now, if you turn them on, you can fine tune it a little bit down the bottom here. You can actually say, well, I don't want to get a notification every time there's a comment on a post or every time someone mentions me, but I would like to get notified of private comments. Or maybe I want to get notified of a late submission, but not a resubmission. And I don't really need to know if a scheduled post was published or not. So you can turn things on or off depending on what you want to get. Okay. And that will definitely cut down the amount of emails you get. And if you open up this bottom section here, you can actually determine which classrooms those notifications apply to. Okay. So you do actually have a fair bit of control over the notification stuff, but you've got to come in and fine tune that. And of course, it's set up in such a way like that, because everyone's different. Everyone wants different things out of it. So we let you fine tune it the way you want. Okay. Again, let's go back to here. Just a couple of words about the stream. You know, I think in a remote learning environment, this stream piece of a classroom where students can talk to each other, it takes on this whole new importance because it becomes the social space for the class. Someone's saying, am I sharing my screen? I think I'm sharing my screen. Are people seeing my screen? Okay, so Jan, not sure what's happening there. But the other thing, if you're going to open up the social space a little bit inside your classroom, then you need to start dealing with some classroom management issues in a different way to the way you would do it if you're face-to-face. And so let me just come out here for a second and show you how I might approach that. So in my demonstration class here, you can see that I've left this open so that anyone can start comments on the stream. And you can see it's starting to get pretty crazy already. That's why I said you need to decide what you want to allow on this front page. So let's say I've got some things going on here. People are introducing themselves. That's fantastic. Now I've got this troublesome student down here. Her name's Leslie Altman. Leslie and I are friends, so I can say this, right? So let's say Leslie is this troublesome student, and I need to just, she's done some things in the stream. She maybe said something that might be mildly inappropriate, or maybe just dominating the conversation and speaking to, whatever it might be. And I need to just sort of deal with that behavior temporarily. One of the things you have at your disposal is to come into the student list here. And here's Leslie right here. Leslie, I hope you don't mind me using this as an example. Let's say Leslie is a student. I just need to sort of take out of play for a little bit. Just sort of say, oh, I just need to have a word with the student. So what I can do is I can tick the student's name, and from the actions menu, I have the option to mute this student. Now, I would love this feature in real life, right? To be able to mute a student in real life. Unfortunately, we can't do that. But if I do it here and I say mute, what actually happens is it takes that student, they can still submit their work. They can still, they're still an academic participant in the class, but they're no longer a social participant in the class. So they can't reply to classmates' work and they can't comment or post. So if you need to, and use this very sparingly, obviously, you can use that feature. So if I do mute Leslie, you can see if I turn that on, what will happen is this student will now have this little red symbol next to their name to indicate that they are currently muted. And Leslie will probably find right now, if she tries to go and leave a comment somewhere or do something in the chat, she can't actually do that. It's just turned off her ability to do that. When you deal with that student, and in a face-to-face situation, I don't know about you, I'd probably take the student, just say, can I see you outside for a moment, have a little chat, try and address the behavior. And once a student sorts themselves out, then you sort of reinstate their behavior. So you can do that and then action and unmute, and they go back to being unmuted again. and life goes on. I can see a question from Jaspreet there saying, would the student get a notification that they've been muted? I'm actually not sure. Leslie, maybe you could tell me if you got a notification.
Well, I'm going to have a look at my email, but when I tried to post, I got a red sign that said, couldn't attach the file. Make sure you have permission to share.
Right.
So I'll have a look at my email and find out whether I've got a little notification from Chris to behave myself. But no.
Perfect. Now, I think in the real world of like face-to-face classroom teaching, you know, the need for a notification probably isn't there as much because you would be speaking to the student in person. And so I'm actually not sure whether it does send them off a notification, but it certainly notifies them as soon as they try and do something. It lets them know that they've been muted.
Chris, there's another question there about if a muted student can actually reply to private comments in an assignment or post a private comment back to the teacher. I'd imagine they probably can.
I think they can. I would want to do the experiment before I give you a definite yes or no answer, but I think they can. But I mean, the nice thing about any of these tools is, you know, you can just run the test yourself. You know, if you're never sure about something, just grab a trusted student and say, hey, can you help me test something? And I just want to see if I do this, what does it do for you? And the kids love helping you out like that. They love sort of helping the teacher figure out how stuff works. Can definitely post private comments to the teacher. Excellent, fantastic. Thanks, Greenwood Sense. All right. All right, so let's move on to this next bit. And that is setting classwork. Now, here's where it starts to get, I think, a little interesting. Before I do that, I'm just going to jump forward in my slides. There's a couple of things here. I just want to make sure I cover this. I definitely don't want to run out of time on this one. So I want to point out a couple of things. These are the things that I think your students need to know, right? And meeting someone said, you know, you've got tons of great resources for teachers about classroom, but there's very little instruction for students. We just assume students will figure this stuff out. And they usually do, but there are a couple of things that I've noticed students sometimes get wrong. So these are the things I think you need to make sure you tell your students. When a student opens an assignment, they get this page, this little dialogue like what you see on the screen there. And there's usually a document or something attached to that, and they have to click on that document to interact with it in some way. Their temptation is to click on the document. But can you please try and get your students into the habit of clicking the button down the bottom that says View Assignment? You might think, what's the difference? The assignment is the document, so what's the difference? Well, sometimes there are multiple documents for a start. Sometimes there are some other instructions that go with it. But the main reason you want to click on that View Assignment button as a habit is that it opens up this view, right? And in this view, this is where you see the Hand In button. So if you're getting kids that are, and I've had this situation where I keep giving these assignments to kids, and why don't they ever hit the Hand In button? These kids, I know they're doing the work, but they don't press the button to hand it in, so it doesn't mark it as done, right? And that's because they're not going in and viewing the actual assignment, so they're not seeing that Hand In button. So try and get your kids into the habit of doing the View Assignment. It's at the bottom of every assignment, or if it's a question, it'll say View Question, right? That way they get that little panel on the side with the big bright coloured button that says Hand It In. The other thing I want to point out about this page, you'll notice there's two places to type there. There's class comments and private comments. Don't get them mixed up. If a student is if you're trying to say something to a student and you think you're leaving a private comment, but really it's a class comment, like you obviously don't want to do that. So do pay attention to those two boxes. Anything you type in the one on the right will be just to the student. Anything you type in the one on the left will be to the whole class. It's a really important distinction. The other thing about that screen that I think sometimes confuses people is this particular screen here. This is for a question type. So you've got assignments and you've got questions. When you ask a question and you give students a chance to respond, to type in a response to their question, to your question, the box that they need to answer in is that one up in the top corner, the one I've surrounded with green there, right? Chris laptop, yes, you're right. It does look quite different to the version on a laptop. on an iPad. The iPad version of this and the laptop version do look quite different, but they do have the same feature. But just make sure when students are answering questions, they're typing up in that box in the corner. I actually think we need to redesign this because I don't think it's nearly obvious enough that that's where they type. The logical place you'd think you're going to type is actually where the class comments goes. And you will get kids that say, I answered the question, but I don't know where it went. And it turns out they did it as a comment and not the actual answer. So So I want to point that out. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think it is not our finest design. I think that box needs to be much bigger. Anyway, those are the sort of key things that I just want to mention about students, the number 3 things that students seem to get wrong all the time. All right, let's talk about classwork for a second. Now, here's a tip that someone showed me, a teacher showed me this. Let me get to Classroom. I'll go back to my demo class here, and I go back to my classwork page. Actually, sorry, no, I'm going to go back to this page. I'm going to go back to my main screen. So you notice that me right now as a teacher, I have 2 classrooms in front of me, the one called CNET Demo Class, and this other thing called a lesson library. And then you notice the demo class, I have 56 students, that's you guys. And in lesson library, I have 0 students. But if I go to the lesson library, what you'll see it is, on the classwork page here, is a whole bunch of assignments and tasks and questions and things that are pre-prepared. So I'm trying to be like a TV chef here, where I go, here's one I prepared earlier, right? Because what I don't want to be doing is rushing around trying to make assignments on the fly, right? Because you tend to rush things and not get them right. So I like to make them in advance. And then when I go to my real classroom, which is over here, the demo class, and I want to set an assignment for you guys, rather than hit the create button and go down to create assignment, and then I've got to fill all this stuff out and make all these choices about how it's going to work. Rather than do all that, I love the fact that I can go to this create button and choose reuse post, right? And if you reuse the post, it lets you go into this, well, first of all, if I just go back, you can see all your classrooms here. So you can either go into the same classroom you're currently in or a different one, and you can use any piece of work. So don't reinvent the wheel. Like if you've done something one time and you want to reuse it again, you just reach into the classroom that contains it, and then you can find a piece of work. Now I've got one in here that I think is called, if I can find it here, this one here. What is your current experience level with Google Classroom? You'll notice the icon in front of it is a little box with a question mark inside it. That's telling me that this is a question rather than an assignment, which is a completely different icon. Okay, so I'm going to use that one. I like to usually click this button down the bottom that says create new copies of all assignments. It just means I'm never damaging my original templates. It's always making a copy first. So I'll hit the reuse button. Not that I think that one actually has anything attached to it, but there you go. So here is the question I'm about to give to my class. That's you, or some of you. And so you can see it says, what's your current experience level with Google Classroom? And I've got a multiple choice question attached to it. So this is all set up here. I'm just going to click on OK. And actually, sorry, before I do that, remember I set up those mark categories before? So right now it gives me this extra box here that I didn't have as standard. So I said classwork, homework, exams. This is classwork, so I'll do that. Fantastic. And I'll just say ask. All right, so if I can ask those of you who are playing today, if you could go into your classwork page, and it normally takes a moment just to appear, but you can always refresh the page and just speed it up if you're feeling a little impatient. And you'll come in here to the question, and this is where I want to remind you, like if you tell your students, click on this thing that says view question, right? And now I see a different view because I'm the teacher. You're going to see slightly different with this, but I will ask you if you can go in there, answer that question. What's your current experience level with Google Classroom? And I can see, oh, I've got some experienced people here. That's fantastic. So 51 people, well, there was 56 in total. Let's just see who else can answer that. So I'll just give you guys a moment to respond.
So Chris, did you, was I a good girl and did you bring me back into the fold?
I certainly did, Leslie. I would never.
Oh, that's all right, because I was going to say this worked.
No, I brought you straight back in.
Good lad.
All right, and you can see there, 41 of you have now done this. Now, that's an example of a question type. So when you go into Classroom, you can choose assignment, question, quiz, and so on. This is a question. Questions can be multiple choice or short answer. And the question, if you do, is one question. So you can't do like a whole class quiz using this tool, but you can do a single question. So something to check for understanding, like we're doing here, or an exit quiz at the end of a piece of work, or you know, there's a lot of ways you can do this, like a social emotional check-in, how you're feeling today, like, and from the student's perspective, you can make this all anonymous. Thank you. Wellness check-in, excellent. Now you can't do this because you're students, but me as the teacher, if you're looking at my screen, you can see that I can come in and say, oh, okay, so who are these people that have used it all the time with their classes? I need to know who they are. So I click on that and I can see, here's all their names down here. If I want to know, like, here's someone who's looked at it but never really used it, so I can see, okay, that's those people. Hi, Frank. And so I can go in here and I can actually see who the people are that are responding a certain way. Now, students don't get to do that, obviously. I can set it up so you can see the results, but not the specifics. Or I can set it up so you don't see anything. Okay? Does that make sense? So there's our first little task, an example of a question. So let's go back to our classwork page here and give you a couple of other examples. So the other thing you can do is to create, and again, rather than go assignment, quiz, question, I'm going to reuse a post again and go in here and show you how you can differentiate work for different students. So I've got two tasks in here. I've got one called the backwards brain bicycle, which is essentially to watch a video and write a response to it. And I've got a similar task called the Archer's Paradox, which is also to watch a different video and write a response. Now I can have these two tasks at different levels. One could be for the sort of the more advanced kids, one could be for the sort of the more general kids, or however you want to do that. I can say, okay, I'm going to attach this one, the backwards brain bicycle task. This might be my advanced task. So I'll go in there, and this one here, here it is here, watch this video, write a response. Let's make all this also this classwork. But instead of giving it to all students, what I want to do is to turn that off and only give it to some students. And so I might actually just, for simplicity, I'll do the top down to Annette, okay? So I'm giving those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, 6 or 7 students this particular task. So I'll push that out like so. That goes out to those students. And then I'll come back to the, to the reuse post again. And I'll go and grab the other one, which is the similar but differentiated task. And I'll reuse that one. And this time, this time I'm again going to make it classwork, and I'm going to give this to not those students down to Annette. Okay, so this group of students got one assignment, everybody else gets a different assignment. If I just assign it out now, you'll see, if you check your stream, your classwork page in a couple of seconds, you'll see that you have, now I as the teacher see both because I've just assigned both, but you as the student only see the one that was assigned to you. So you never need to feel like, oh, I'm getting the dummy work, or, you know, anything like that. It's all, you're only getting the work that is the one that the teachers feels is appropriate for where you're at. So you can really easily differentiate. So it's a lovely feature there. Is there any questions on that point?
There's a question there about archiving some of the older work there, Chris.
Sure, I will come back to that. I'll just, how are we going for time? 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, not what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 minutes.
Yep, okay. I will try and come back to that. A couple of features I just want to show you guys, and that is one of the new features we've got here is called originality reports. And again, I've prepared one here for you. I believe it is called originality report demonstration. And I will need you guys to do this, and it's not something I can really show, unfortunately, because it's a student-facing feature. But we've got this option now called originality reports, and it's a way of students to be able to, and it's particularly aimed, I guess, at the sort of older students, high school or upper primary, more so than it is the younger years. But what it does, if I turn this on for this particular task, now I'm setting up a little dummy task here. What I would normally do is ask you, my students, to write something or do something, do a piece of work, and then submit it back to me, right? And then just for the sake of trying to show you how this works, I've actually attached something to this, which I'll push out for you. I'll give every student a copy. So I'll just assign that to you. So when that arrives to you, I just want you to imagine that you've written it, okay? Just for the sake of the demonstration. So I get you to go into your originality report. And when you go into yours, you won't see this screen. You'll actually see the document that you can open, right? And up in the top corner, in fact, Leslie, are you there?
Yes.
Would you be able to share your screen and show the student view of this so everyone can see that?
So, okay, yep, I'll just get into mine now.
That was checking if you're paying attention, wasn't it?
I've got two screens going here. You know, I'm in it. I'm in the zone.
Okay, good. All right. Do I need to stop sharing, or will you just push me off?
No, I'd say you would have to stop sharing, and I'm just opening up my classroom now and finding my second classroom, because I'm in one on another. There it is, CENet demo class. I'm in it. And where's the Zoom here? So I wonder if I can, you have to stop sharing.
How do I stop sharing?
Click the stop sharing button.
See the stop sharing button.
Hey, it is green down the bottom.
Yeah, I click that, nothing happens.
Okay, continue.
I've stopped
hang on, I'm in.
Okay.
I think I'm in.
Okay, so this is Leslie's screen.
This is my screen here, okay.
So Leslie, if you could go to your classwork page. Now remember what we're seeing now, this is the student view. So the student goes in there, they see, okay, there is the originality report demonstration. And so we view that assignment. And you'll see that the piece of work that's attached up in the top corner there, like for the sake of the demonstration, I've given it to you, but I want you to imagine it's something that Leslie has written herself, okay?
So I'm going to open up my assignment.
First thing you're going to do, Leslie, is open it up so we can have a look at it. You notice that opens in another tab. So here's a piece of work. This is a piece of original writing. I'm writing it straight out of my head. It has hopefully never existed anywhere else before, blah, 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 right? Now, I will tell you that some of those pieces of text were written straight out of, well, my head, right? And some of them were plagiarized straight from the internet, but you don't know which are which, right? So like a teacher gets an assignment like this and you kind of go, there's things in there that I don't think that kid really wrote, but I don't know how to check it. Okay, Leslie, can I get you to go back to the classwork page, the previous tab? Okay, and you'll see there, underneath there, it says Originality Reports, Run. Now, when you click that, what it will do, it essentially, well, yeah, you can just, now you get 3 cracks at this. Okay, so you can run this up to 3 times. So typical way to do it, yeah, let's run that. Typical way to do this, a student would run it, then they'd get back a report to tell them how original or not their work was. And then they would make some changes and then run it again, and then perhaps make some more changes and run it a 3rd time before their teacher checks it. Now, Leslie, just go back to Classroom and just go, yep, okay. So see underneath the document now, it says View Originality Report, 2:53 p.m. That's the one we just ran. When you open that, it actually brings up the piece of work, and over on the side, why have you got no flagged passages?
Because I had to turn this quoted passage on, the web match here, although it's quoted.
Yeah, that's a quote. Why are you not seeing the rest? That's what's going on. Can you run that originality report again?
Yep. Right, that was once. Now I'm up to my second originality report.
Unless I've accidentally attached the version that doesn't have unoriginal stuff in. Okay, it's 88% done. And it's nearly done. There
Chris,
you go.
just quickly, there's a question about what's the difference between turn in, hand in, and those different wordings across different.
It generally, sorry, Leslie, I don't know why that's not flagging that content for you. That's really weird. Because there's definitely things in there that I stole from the internet. I'm going to need to check that. Okay. But like it's picked up the quoted passage, as you can see if you turn that switch on. So it's realized that that comes from somewhere else as a quotation because it's got quote marks around it. And you can click that edit button down the bottom and then you can go and you actually make changes yourself. So you can see how to fix your work. Yeah, I don't know why that's not flagging the rest of the stuff.
I wonder if I add some more in there now while you're talking.
So no, I'm going to take my screen back, if that's okay.
Yep. I will have to stop sharing for you to do that. There you go. Are you back now?
I guess I want to do that. Share. Yep. And okay, I think I'm back now. Yes. Okay, fantastic. Sorry, Ben, what was the question?
Just a different wording about hand in, turn
Oh,
in.
right. It depends on what language, what version of English your computer is set to. If it's set to US English or UK English, it'll depend on whether it's turn in or hand in.
And also, I found some of my teachers had mark book instead of grade book, so their setting must have been set to Canadian time or English, British time.
Yeah. Now, and of course, what the teacher sees here is this kind of stuff. Now, I'll use again. I'll pick on Leslie, but if I click on Leslie work here, you'll see that this opens up in this view. This is called grading interface. See that it's the messages that are coming up. Okay, so here's the student's assignment, right? The student hasn't handed it in yet, so we can both edit it together. We still have editing rights. I don't think it works with a PDF. No, it does not work with a PDF. It needs to be a Google Doc, I believe. I can actually even check the originality on Leslie's behalf. I've got this little originality check thing up in the corner here. Now, the other thing I can do as I'm grading this work, and this is really kind of one of the key features of Classroom, although it is actually a Google Docs feature. So let's say I want to make a comment on something the student's written here, is this little comment button that comes up. This is like a little sticky note to a piece of work here. So I can say, I love this comment. I love this statement, the way you've written it. Right, so I can leave a comment for a student just like that, and the student will see that comment. And I know, Leslie, you haven't handed it in, so you should be able to see that right now. You could probably respond. See if you can do. If you can't, don't worry. So this feature of using the comment thing here in Classroom, this is actually one of the most powerful features of Google Docs in general, but particularly the way it's enabled inside Classroom, because you can actually, oh, so there's Leslie's comment. I can, you're welcome. We can go to this little diatribe here. I can actually leave back and forward comments to a student about a particular idea. And my favorite story about this is I had a Year 11 student who wrote an essay for me one time on, I don't even remember what it was about, but I remember she wrote something in this essay that was a particularly interesting and somewhat contentious comment. And I left a comment on it. And she responded with her come back to my comment, and I responded, and she responded, and so on and so on and so on. It ended up being the comment thread about one sentence in this essay was actually more interesting than the essay, right? Because we were both I was trying to convince her of something, and she was trying to convince me of something, and it became a really persuasive essay in the comments rather than in the essay. But I love the fact that you can do that. You can talk about the work and not just in the work. Okay? It's a really, really powerful feature. And of course, once this does get resolved, like if I've highlighted, please check your spelling, or, are you sure about these facts? Once I've highlighted something in here that I want the student to address, they can discuss it with me. And then once we both feel like that this is at a point where we've resolved it, I can hit this resolve button up here, and it takes it away. Now, those comments never actually go away. They always live up here in this little speech bubble, and I can always bring them back at any time. So all of the conversations about a piece of work never get lost, particularly in a remote context. That ability to have conversations with students about the work is absolutely, it's such a powerful feature. It's simple, but it's such a big deal. While I'm on this grading interface, there's also the ability to leave a private comment to a student. So this is a private comment in general about the work, and not specifically about a sentence in the work, which you would use a comment feature for. And there's also the ability in here to have a comment bank, which, there's also brand new accounts, giving me lots of pop-up messages. There's also the ability to have a comment bank, and so I can add comments into the comment bank, like, you know, really naff ones like great work. Hopefully your comments are much better than that, right? But when I put something into a comment bank and then I want to use it, so if I select that and then go into make a comment, you can see that if I start typing, actually, if I start with a hashtag, you'll see all my comments will appear underneath, and I can just select that and it replaces it with a comment. So you can have hundreds of comments in that comment bank. And in fact, when you put the comments in, when you go add to bank, it says add multiple comments by starting a new line. So if you simply paste a whole bunch of comments in there, in fact, let me give you an example of sentences. I take that first paragraph. Oh, no, that's a bad example. Never mind. Anyway, you can add multiple comments in there, and you can use those comments by typing a hashtag. Just as soon as you do that, type hash, all the comments pop up, and they just show just like that. It's a really quick and easy way to add comments. Okay. I am going to get out of that page, go back to my main page here. And can I squeeze one last thing in? There's a yes.
Yes.
Okay. The last thing I just want to show you guys is let's go back to create, reuse post. Oh, so I got another assignment here I just want to show you, and that is it uses, where is it here? Where is it? It is my multimedia project. So let's say I'm teaching, this one was from an actual assignment I gave some students, multimedia project where they had to produce some video, create a video on a topic of your choice, must be no more than 2 minute long, using a variety of media, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but so the kids know what I'm looking for when I grade this, I've got a rubric attached to it down here. So you can see there, here's the rubric. If I click on that, it will open up. So this particular rubric uses development of an original PowerPoint message, multimedia creation using digital tools, distribution of final product, ethical use of digital media, public response to the finished work. They're my criteria. Within each of those criteria, I've got a performance statement that I want students to match. So it's just your typical criteria that you would use for grading. Now, if, let me just get back out of there. When I push that out to students, I'll use this as an example here. So when I push that out to students, let's view the assignment. Okay, everybody's assignments. Also notice when I push that out to students, the rubric is attached, so the student will see this. I'll be able to click on that and see the actual, the full rubric. So what it is they've been graded on. But what I love about this is when I'm grading this work from the student, so again, Leslie, sorry, I'm going to pick on you today. You might need to hand that in, actually.
Yeah, I thought I did.
Oh, did you?
Maybe I didn't press it twice.
Let's go in here and have a look.
Yeah, no, I've got to unsubmit it. It's already turned in.
Multimedia project?
The originality report demonstration.
No. This is a new one.
Well, I've got another assignment.
Yeah, I'm that kind of teacher.
Okay, so which one do I have to do? The paradigm?
The multimedia project. Just hand it in.
Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Yeah.
View the assignment. And I can't hand it in until I create something.
Oh, can you? Okay. All right. You add something to that and hand it in, and I'll just finish the rest of this stuff.
I'll create a document here and just add some stuff in there.
Okay. So that's the things I want to talk about. The different types of classwork. There's assignments, which is when you're asking a student to do something that you'll be generally giving them feedback on and grading. There's quizzes, which use Google Forms to do quizzes, which can be self-grading. Those self-grades can automatically import into the gradebook. Questions, which we showed you originally, they can be short answer or multiple choice. And I talk about material. Material is just simply giving students stuff. So it might be, here's a PDF copy of some notes, or here's a link to a website, or here's a whatever. So these are material is stuff you give to students that you don't need to track the progress of, and you don't really expect them to do anything with. Okay, you're just giving them stuff. And we talked about this idea of developing a lesson library so you can reuse tests. In terms of giving feedback, you've got different ways. The feedback cycle is super important. We talked about the grading screen when you students grading there. You've got the commenting feature to leave comments inside G Suite itself. You can leave comments in, I showed you an example in Docs, but you can do the same thing in slides, sheets, drawings. Basically, you just click on what you want to give feedback on and add a little comment to it. The comment bank saves time with the hashtag thing, private comments, and the grading using a rubric, which I'm just about to show you, if Leslie does this.
Yep, it's done.
Done, thank you so much. Let's find which class thingy I'm in now. This one here, so there's Leslie there. She's handed it in. So I'm going to click on her work. And you'll see that over on the side here, because of this, the work had a rubric. Down here, I actually see the rubric, and I can see the categories that I'm trying to grade here. So, for example, in the development part, okay, I think her work was very advanced. It contained a strong, very clearly communicated message. So that's great. What about in the next category? Well, the next category, yes, the final product combined a range of media types. That was great. The distribution, it was uploaded to YouTube and tagged appropriately. The ethical use, yes, and significant evidence, but it wasn't advanced. And finally, the public response, yes, she got some public response to it. Right, and you can see what's happening with that is it's added it up for me. There's my final grade, 17 out of 20. So when I return that to the student, that was my grading process there against a rubric. Obviously, I would have looked at the work and watched the video and sort of made an assessment of it. But having made that assessment, the grading process with the rubric then becomes really streamlined because I'm literally just clicking on which of those criteria the student has met for that, which of the performance.
Chris, can you jump back into the grades and where that looks in the markbook? The grade?
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Just there's a question on that.
Yeah, sure, no worries. I'll go into my demo class and go back to my markbook. And right now, I've really only got one class from one assignment from one student.
And while that screen's loading, Chris, it was good because when I was in the assignment, I had the rubric at the bottom, so I could constantly refer to that as a student.
Yep. Yeah, the rubric feature is really lovely. And you can see in here that, if I can find Leslie in here somewhere. Where is she? I can't find you, Leslie. Oh, it's alphabetical. There you go. So there it is. It says she got 17 out of 20. I can see her originality report was handed in and so on. So because Leslie's the only student here I've been sort of interacting with in this session, that's the only one I've got results for, but you can see that as each piece of work goes in, and by the way, you notice that Archer's Paradox and Backwards Brain Bicycle, that's the piece of work I differentiated by giving to different students. For the students who didn't get one task or the other, you can see it's either assigned or not assigned, depending on whether they actually got that or not. And as the gradebook works out average marks, it'll calculate it'll take into account the fact that some students didn't get some pieces of work and others did. So it's quite smart like that.
Now, Chris, I'm very conscious of time.
Me too.
Pretty much up.
Yep.
There is a question there from Sonia about creating a rubric. It's a really straightforward process. It kind of talks you through the steps to it.
It's a straightforward process. If I create an assignment, Sonia, and I simply go, didn't you give it a title first before you're allowed to click this rubric button, like that? It just came live. You can create a rubric. You can actually do it on the fly. You can reuse a rubric. So if I've got a rubric from an existing class, I can click in there and you can see I could reuse the one from the multimedia project. Or I can import a rubric if I've got it exists in another format. So just to show you what that looks like real quickly, create a rubric is like this. I write my criteria, my description of my criteria, and then these are my performance bands down here. I can add as many or as few as I like. And I showed this to someone the other day. They were very excited about the fact that you could have different numbers of criteria, different numbers of performance bands for different criteria. So they might mark one thing out of 3 sections and another one out of 5 sections. They don't all have to be the same, like they would be in a normal table. So that's how you create them. Like I said, if you, let me get out here, discard. If you Google Drive here, you can see I've got this Google Sheet. So this multimedia project, this is a Google Sheet. This format is like to, And if I actually go to the classroom and show you how it works, if I go rubric, import sheets, and find that in this.
Your sound's cutting out, Chris.
It's importing it in. So, is my internet flaked out, is it?
Just the sound, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got a message saying my connection was doing weird things. But anyway, that's how you do it, guys. So I know I tried to jam a lot in there, and I did rush through some bits, and I apologise for that. But I hope you got something out of that session. And thanks, Ben, for hosting, and thanks everyone for turning up.
No worries. Thanks, Chris. It's always a pleasure to have you talk to us and take us through these tips. And
No worries at all.
Definitely unpacked a lot in Google Classroom, so hopefully a lot of people can take that away with them. If I can direct people to give some feedback, the resources will be posted onto the website sometime tonight, early tomorrow morning. You'll have the video, you'll have Chris's slides, and any other resources that Chris shares or that we get links to the amazing work that they've got. So thank you. Any other questions?
I'd like to ask, how can you tidy up the other information that you've had from a previous term?
Yes, right. You asked me about the
archiving and things.
The archiving, yeah. In the sorry, back to the main page.
Back in there, Chris.
What's that, mate?
Do you want a screen share?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just buy the little ones, because I find buying the big ones, we don't use it fast enough and I throw it off. So
hopefully there you can see my screen again.
Yep.
So when you're finished with the class completely, you notice it's got 3 dots in the top corner here. You can click on the 3 dots and you have the option to archive a class. So if I'm completely finished with this demo class, I could hit archive. It goes away out of my main collection, but where it goes to is, if I open up the main menu here and go down to archived classes, you'll see it sitting here in the archived class list, and it's got the diagonal lines through it to let me know it's archived. If I really definitely don't want this class anymore, I can again go to the 3 dots and now delete it. So it's a little bit like the trash on your computer, where you put a document in the bin first and then you empty the bin. It doesn't automatically get deleted. When you archive a class, it just takes it out of that main screen and puts it in this archived collection, which you then decide whether you want to actually get rid of it for good or not. When you archive a class, it basically freezes the class in time. So all the work stays there, all the comments that students have made, everything that existed about that class stays the way it was at the time you archived it. A lot of teachers will use this for, like, say, a 2-year course, like year 11 and 12, where they'll archive year 11, so it gets locked in, but students can still go into it and look through the contents of the course if they're still a member of it, even though they can't interact with it anymore.
What about archiving just assignments in that thread? You know how that can get busy? Is there a way of archiving the assignments? I think there's questions.
Oh, yeah, there's not a good way to do that really at the moment. The workaround that I've seen people do is, if I go back to my classroom page somewhere, where is it? It's here. So in the classwork page, so people are saying, like, okay, this assignment's been done, I don't want it there anymore, I want to put new things in this science collection. So what I've seen people do is they create a new topic and they call it past assignments, right? I even spell it right sometimes. Right. So they create a new topic, like so, and I'm going to move this down to the bottom of the page where it's kind of out of the way, right? And then if I say, okay, this backwards brain bicycle is done now, I'm going to take that and just grab it and move it into past assignments. So it now lives down there. There is no archiving feature as such, but that's how I've seen people deal with it. They just create a category called past assignments, just drag them in there once they're done. Yeah, Dennis has come up with another suggestion there, is you can create a topic called Term 1 reading groups and then create another one called Term 2 reading groups and just try and sort of put things into smaller chunks. Christine says, can you stop students from resubmitting an assignment after the due date? You currently can't. I know it's on the feature request. I know it's something that's been looked at. it does actually mark them as like it timestamps them, so you know it's been handed in. But I think I know what you're asking. Like, how do you stop a student from changing an assignment after it's been submitted? So that's definitely on our list of things to work on. You move to a new class. Okay, so on that note, I know it's after 3, so I don't want to hold you guys up, but I will bid you adieu. And say thanks.
No worries. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I know a lot of people jumped out at 3 probably to go to the ClickView session, which is on secondary ClickView, which if you want to jump across there, you'll be able to jump into that now. Otherwise, tomorrow we've got a jam-packed day as well, so hopefully you can tune in again. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Thank you.